And Tainu coming out from Koodle gets Big Boy, and this is looking at.
Yeah, I mean, Crest only has one ultimate, but at the same time, they're just moving on forward. They're getting more. Ah yes, the champions everyone expected. Quite the variation from this morning's video, especially in how these two teams journeyed to their respective titles. While Platchat was the dark horse no one saw coming, until it happened, almost everyone expected Crest to go far. While the team themselves despised the apathy the community seemed to have towards their success, they never let it slow them down in their conquest through the Advanced Division. Let's take a ride through the path Crest took to earn their place in League Zero's Hall of Champions. Crest was originally founded from a rebrand of the original Noot Noot roster of Season 0. Just like the previous season, Ozzy would be managing his new passion project. He had managed to build a team with insane talent in Season 0, but the Noots were never quite able to climb the hurdle of the top few teams back then. This season would be different. Ozzy had been scouting out high-level players all throughout the offseason in preparation. Everyone knew of the private scrims Crest held whole weeks before the rest of the league had any clue of who they wanted, but no one in advance could do anything about it. They could either continue scouting the draft pool like normal and allow Ozzy to build his dream team, or try to steal a few players at the risk of not knowing anything about them. Unsurprisingly, no team bothered to steal the vast majority of Crest's draft picks, and they even managed to steal Buffalo before Z9 had a chance to pick him up for their own dream team. When the dust settled, Crest had made out with plenty of terrifyingly talented players such as Falcon, Koodle, Chance, Shadow Dragon aka Ultra, and plenty more. The team was also joined by a few original Noot Noot players such as Chance and Oof for their support line. Almost everyone was placing Crest in one of the top 2 spots for their preseason power rankings, and this would turn out to be one of the very few times such predictions became reality. What better way to start off the season than with a slaughter? Okay, maybe that's a bit harsh. Hangzhou put up a good fight, but they were obviously outmatched by the raw teamwork Crest displayed. Their cohesion was a thing of beauty, and the reported 3 to 4 scrims per week leading up to the season was absolutely paying off. The team was trying hard to prove their worth as a top seed, and nothing would stand in their way from achieving that goal. Their domination over Advanced would continue for multiple weeks, where no one seemed capable of even bringing them to a map 5, let alone defeating them. However, Crest felt a disconnect with the rest of the community, and this is where an interesting psychological study could probably be made, if nowhere else in the league. Crest was expected to do great from the preseason, and they lived up to that hype, but the community never outwardly expressed very much praise towards them. It was almost expected, and a bigger deal was made when a team almost brought the game to a map 5, or even just made it somewhat close. It was almost like Crest's opponents were getting more credit for losing than they were for winning, and it never truly got to the point where the spectators were actively cheering for the underdogs to pull out an upset, at least not until the finals, but the common disposition was just a few steps below that. Nevertheless, it wasn't until Week 4's game against Z9 that anyone would put Crest's mettle to the test. Z9's Somber Goats at the time was a force to be reckoned with, and considering 2/3 of their starting lineup had even more experience playing with each other than Crest, it was unclear who had the immediate advantage going into the matchup. Z9 would take an early lead, only for Crest to bring it right back. The teams fought tooth and nail for every inch of ground gained, which brought them to the final round of the 5th map Oasis to decide the victor. For the first time throughout the entire season, and arguably the only time, Crest looked mortal. They were being pushed to the very brink of their skill in teamwork, and despite maintaining their composure throughout, they were still at risk of losing. In the end, Z9 would edge out the victory thanks to a few misplays on Crest's part that would result in them misusing various ultimates in the second to last fight, giving their opponents the edge in ult economy when it mattered. Despite the tough loss, the team recounts being incredibly proud of their performance, acknowledging where they needed improvement. This speed bump wouldn't stop them from going on to retain their first place spot and closing out the first half of the season with a 4-1 record. Very few changes were made throughout the mid-season break, or throughout the entire season for that matter. Crest shifted around their substitutes a bit, letting go of Oof and picking up Saito as a backup to Chance, but their starting roster remained solid for pretty much the entire season. Occasionally they would have to sub someone like J-Venom in for Buffalo if he wasn't available, but Crest barely missed a beat even with their backups being brought in. The coaches were supposedly becoming less active as the season progressed, and there were some worries about the rest of the league improving faster than they were, though this self-doubt didn't seem to slow them down too much. Crest had marginally less problems to work on compared to the rest of Advanced Division, especially when compared to the likes of Easy Clap or Chengdu at the time. Their scrim schedule slowly ramped down from 3 to 4 per week to 1 to 2 as the season progressed, with little change in the way of results, so in the end you can't really blame them for getting lazy if they were still racking up wins left and right. The second half of the season went on just like the first for the most part. Hangzhou put up a stronger fight this time around and almost reverse swept, but were ultimately denied their revenge. Noot Noot and Easy Clap were in shambles or just recovering from their respective explosions, so they were basically fodder, and even the rising Chengdu fell short of bringing their game to a map 5. The real match everyone kept their eyes on was Week 9's rematch with Z9. Reality had been gone for a while at this point, but otherwise they still looked like a strong opponent. The question was whether or not Crest learned from the last time. Once again, the game was flip-flopping all over the table, both teams clawing their way to victory. This time, however, it was Crest that took an early lead, only for Z9 to answer back immediately with strong performances on maps 2 and 3. Map 4 came around and Z9 came out swinging on Junkertown for their first attack. They breezed their way through the first and second points, giving them ample time to capture third. It was looking somewhat dire for Crest up until that point, though no one knew what the strategy was that they would deploy on their own attack quite yet. However, the game would experience technical difficulties just prior, giving them the chance they needed. Blizzard server errors automatically sent the game back to the lobby midway through Z9's push on third, forcing the map to reset entirely and subsequently tilting Z9 off the face of the planet. This time Crest was ready for Z9's DPS heavy offense and managed to put a stop to it early on after first point. Their opponents never truly recovered from the reset. They were mentally out of the game from then on, which led Crest to taking Junkertown and later on Oasis, earning their revenge. By the time the regular season played out, Crest was obviously the #1 seed. With a 9-1 record, they were significantly ahead of their next best challenger in Z9. This of course meant that they would get the bye round right past the quarterfinals, and they'd even get to choose their opponents for the semis. No one had any doubts that Chengdu and Bark would be advancing, and the whole community was curious to see who Crest would choose to fight first. Hangzhou had gotten incrementally better each time they fought Crest in the past, but Chengdu also had a lot of hype surrounding their playoff chances. Would it be worth the risk to choose the stronger opponents you know versus the bombastically unpredictable team you don't? Crest seemed to think so. They chose to play Bark for the third and final time this season. Their opponents put up a good fight, but ultimately they let their nerves get the better of them. They tried too hard to play comps they weren't comfortable on, and ultimately fell to Crest 3-1. To nobody's surprise, Crest would be going to the grand finals, though perhaps to some's shock, they'd be facing the Chads. Despite their dominance throughout the entire season, and their past record in facing Chengdu, the vast majority of the community was predicting Crest to fall in yet another finals upset. Maybe they were just blindly going with the hype train after Platchat managed to pull off their own miracle the night prior. Regardless, Crest didn't let those predictions get to them, as they were extremely confident in their ability to roll over the Chads when the time came. And sure enough, they not only 4-0'd the finals, they completely dismantled any hope Chengdu had of gaining any ground. The first few maps were somewhat close, but still heavily favored by Crest, and by the time maps 3 and 4 came around, it was practically already over. Their opponents were floundering around with barely any fight left in them. This can be attributed to some nerves and some to Crest running an odd triple DPS comp that worked way better than it ever had any business doing. Just another testament to their legacy, I suppose. Crest claimed their title, as everyone had expected them to do before the season had even started, carving a swath through the entirety of Advanced in the process. I would like to go on record saying that I was the only analyst that predicted Crest to take the finals. Granted, I predicted a 4-1, but close enough. Seriously though, I simultaneously understand, sympathize, and don't understand the one challenge Crest was never truly able to overcome: perception. Despite the winning streak, losing only to Z9 in one of the highest level matches League Zero has ever seen, it was almost like the community refused to acknowledge their success. I know there's apparently some disagreement between how Crest never gave their subs any playtime and supposedly lied about giving playtime, but the details on that are fuzzy and hard to verify. And to be entirely honest, they did what any good team has to do and kept that kind of drama out of the game itself. They consistently brought their best selves to the game for 12 games straight, and that says a lot about the team and its players in particular. Mind you, there were at least 2 weeks out of practice by the time playoffs rolled around, but we could have never known that by the way they were playing if they didn't explicitly tell us in their post-season press conference. That's the caliber of team and player it takes to be a champion in the Advanced Division. And love them or hate them, you can't deny that they are one of the best teams to have ever competed in this league thus far. At the very least, Crest, you can now rest easy knowing that you have proven the naysayers wrong with a shiny exclusive role to go along with it. Solid performance, insane team, and I can't wait to see where everyone ends up in the future, whether it be playing in future seasons of League Zero or competing elsewhere, because you know the potential of greatness is already there. A+.